Hey guys, welcome to today's live. I decided earlier this year that I would be going live every so often. Actually, I did commit to doing it monthly, but I think I'm ending up doing it every other month. So I decided, you know what, this Sunday afternoon, I think Sunday afternoons have just worked better in the past in terms of doing live streams. I just thought this Sunday afternoon, sunny, stroke rainy, sunny afternoon here in the West Midlands, I just thought, let me join in. Let me go through some of the questions that you've been posting, sending me either via email or posting on my videos. I'll just have a sit down with you and address some of those questions. And of course, if you're watching this after the fact, so if you're watching this as a post live, feel free to add on more questions in the comments. I do have a look at them. It's just that I want to be using some of these sessions when I go live to address them. And of course, you have a chance to ask your question live. So feel free to pop your question in the chat. And as I go along, as I address some of these questions, I will get to yours. Feel free to let me know where you're joining from. I'm joining from the West Midlands. And how your Sunday has been. Like, it would be nice to just know what everyone has been up to, how you're feeling, if you're looking forward to the week or not. I'm looking forward to next weekend. I know it's already Sunday, the week hasn't started, but I am looking forward to, I really had a very good weekend, and I'm looking forward to the next weekend. So it's just powering through the week, and Friday will be here sooner rather than later. I'll stop waffling and get started with our first question, but please pop your question in the chat, because this is a live Q&A. It's an opportunity for us to interact, for me to have a look at your questions, address some of the things you've been wanting to, and I guess we can also bounce ideas off each other. If there's other additional tips you want to add on to a specific question that I'm asking, then yeah, feel free to engage. Definitely best for us to keep this going. I can see Prince, you've joined. Welcome, Prince. And I can see you're also saying you've completed your Master of Commerce. I mean, you're way ahead of a lot of other people who are doing ACCA. Actually, I forgot to mention this Q&A is mainly for ACCA. I did do a poll earlier in the week, and ACCA took the win. So the questions today will be focused on ACCA. I'll go through some from the videos that have been there in the past, but then also feel free to pop in your questions. I'll address them right away. And I can see, Prince, you've kicked it off. I mean, that's the best thing. You're here, so I might as well get straight into it with your question. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at the comment section. So please add on questions as we go along. So I can see you want to do ACCA. Could you guide me on how I start preparation where I can get ACCA study materials? Okay, so where you get the study materials really does depend on the country you're in. So maybe just mention what country you're in, but I'll tell you where I got my study materials. So I used secondhand study material. This is something I've mentioned in some of my other videos, that you don't need to get the latest, like you'll notice, especially Kaplan, BPP, that they usually mention the years covered by that material. So for example, they'll say this is valid for exams for this period, the next 4 sessions, for example, because they tend to do it annually. But it's not like when those exam sittings are done that that book becomes invalid. In fact, most cases than not, it's usually fine. So I used to buy the material from Amazon, actually, and eBay, for the sitting that had just passed, so like the previous year. So I wasn't too comfortable going too many years back, because at the end of the day, some things change, some concepts change. But if you do buy 1 year back, it's usually cheaper, and normally it's fine. Like, I passed my exam, so clearly it's evidence that it's not a problem. It's only for like tax papers where they need to publish, like certain allowances for the year can change, but most times than not, the material is the same. So feel free to buy secondhand material, but I've got mine from Amazon. I mainly used Kaplan. I used BPP only for like one paper, but Kaplan was what I used. You only need to use ACCA approved materials. So it's not like you can only go by Kaplan, BPP. There's so many tuition providers out there. You just need to look out for whether they're ACCA approved. Okay, I can see there's a question from Halima. Hi, is it too late to study for the September exam? We're in July. So it depends what exam is it. Maybe you can mention if is it like an applied skill paper? Is it professional level? Is it applied knowledge? If it's applied knowledge, it's not too late. Even applied skills, it's probably not too late. It's only if it's strategic professional that I would probably encourage you to give it a bit more time, but normally allow at least 6 weeks for a paper. And also, what is a factor is whether you're studying full time or you're doing this as a side thing. If it's full time, it's not too late, even for any level of paper. But if you are doing other things and you only have like 2 hours a day, for example, after work to do it, then you probably want to get started right away. You want to leave at least 6 weeks before an exam. And the exams are usually first week of that month. So if I have a look now, yeah, I would say you're just literally cutting it. You want to start right away, if anything, but it depends on what level you're at the moment. So leave at least 6 weeks normally is the rule of thumb that I would give when it comes to preparing for ACCA exams. Okay, I can see you're saying strategic professional. It's cutting it close. Again, it depends on whether you will be able to dedicate fully, like some time fully to it. And also if it's the only exam you're preparing for, because sometimes people sit up to 4 exams in one exam session, like one exam calendar, like session actually, you can call it that. So if it's the only paper that you're revising for and you have a lot of time, then you should literally start right away. But as I said, leave it at least 6 weeks. And strategic professional, especially SBL, has a lot because they combined 2 papers into one. Before it used to be P1 and P2. They were separate papers. But now it's one exam. So they've actually like combined. I can't remember what the names for P1 and P2 used to be. But then they combined. So it's a big paper. So I would definitely say you're cutting it close, but I wouldn't discourage you from revising for it. Just know that you'd need to dedicate a lot of time into it, not just a few hours every day. I can see, Prince, you have asked a question. How much time to take to clear ACCA? Which subject is most tough? So I think because you had mentioned earlier that you are starting, I'm guessing you've not done a paper yet, or if you have, it's those initial papers. I would say it really depends, genuinely, it really depends. There are people who are able to do it in 3 years. So those are the people who most times what their work actually includes the study. So people who go to audit firms and therefore they take study breaks, like for a month or so, they go to college. So it's ingrained in the day-to-day work. So it can take normally 3 years. 3 years is the average if you're literally doing papers back to back every exam session, because they're usually 4 exam sessions. It's there is March, June, September, December. So there are people who every session they're doing at least minimum 2 papers. So in that case, you'll be able to do it in 3 years. But I took 6 years, and this is because I was doing self-study and somewhere in between I paused, like there's a year I didn't do. So it really depends on your circumstances. I was doing it in addition to work. I wasn't taking time off work to study for it. So I wouldn't say that you need to be pressured more about how long it will take. It's more about how many can you clear, what's your availability, what are your circumstances, and don't compare yourself with somebody else. Because at the end of the day, when you're chartered, you're chartered. It doesn't matter whether it took you 2 years. However, but 3 years it tends to be the case because you need 3 years work experience. But if you already have the work experience, then knock yourself out. You can do maximum 4 exams in a sitting. So it just depends how much you can handle. Because as you see, it's tough. It will test your character. It's not something that is just a walk in the park. It will definitely test your character, especially as you move up the levels. So yeah, which subject is most tough? As you advance through, so there is applied knowledge. Those are the easiest. Actually, I read like half the book and I passed because you need 50% to pass. Like applied knowledge I found it easy. Applied skills is when it starts getting, you have to pay attention, you have to actually be serious with the study and everything. And then strategic professional is no joke. It's case study approach. It's less about, because the other papers have like the first section is multiple choice. You can kind of get away with half the paper at least. But the strategic professional is no joke. It's no joke. It needs you to understand. It needs you to apply it to a real life scenario. It's not a joke. I can tell you that I think my biggest struggle was the strategic professional papers. Yeah, so I can see Techie B is saying, is advanced performance management tough? And do you have any tips to pass it? So this actually makes me remember an email that I got this morning from an avid watcher. I'll not mention your name just to protect your privacy because you emailed and you didn't post on YouTube, where like a public platform. So she had mentioned that she's self-studying. So just like me, I self-studied through all the levels. And she has retaken APM. So very related to your question, Techie B. She's retaken APM 5 times. And each time she got a score very close to 50, because 50 is the pass mark for all the papers. And of course, that made her feel dejected, and she's asking for tips. So similar to you, Techie B. So, and also she studies outside work, like as an extra, like a side hustle, basically. And there's certain resources that she uses, African Hub and Practice Platform, and YouTube videos for webinars. So yeah, tips on APM. So I will cover this topic in at large scale, like covering anyone who's doing optional papers. So advanced performance management, advanced audit and assurance. There is advanced financial management, and there's one for tax. I think it's just called advanced tax. Yeah, those 4 optional papers are very tough. They're for those who are specializing. So they're the last 2. When you're doing strategic professional, you'll do the 2 mandatory and then 2 optional. So advanced performance management, along with the other optional papers, generally, they need you to really understand. It's way beyond theory. It's way beyond reading through the study manual and thinking you've understood. It requires a lot of practice. So advice I'd give you, Techie B, and also the lady who sent me the email, you really do need to change your strategy, because something I definitely learned from experience when I did APM actually, and I did AAA. I struggled more with AAA than APM, was that I would understand the concept when I'm going through the study material. Then when I'm doing my mock paper, I would think I've answered the question. In fact, I would answer the questions too briefly. Something I learned, and I should probably even put in the description, because I really did a video just covering how to approach optional papers, ACCA optional papers, is that you need to cover, when you're addressing the question, don't just address what you think is being asked. You need to consider both sides. You need to set the context. You need to put a conclusion. So if a question is saying trying to think of a question, discuss the performance, because normally what they do, they give a setting of a company, and then the company's performance, they call out certain things that they need you to pick up on and include in your answer, and then they'll say, discuss this, or what would you advise the CEO, or something along those lines. Now, you shouldn't just go straight and say, I'd advise the CEO to do A, B, C, D. You need to, if there's any data that has been presented, it's for a reason. It needs you to calculate something. If there are any other factors, like not just things that support the discussion, you also need to call out things that conflict with the topic itself. And then you need to have a conclusion. I think something I struggled with is I'd call out the facts and then I'll just leave it at that. No, you need to have a conclusion. You need to have a point of view, because after this, you will be a professional, will be advising clients, and they'll consider that you're chartered. So you need to have a point of view based on the facts presented. So the only best way to know what is the best way to present your answer is honestly to practice. You need to practice. That was just a long-winded way of me telling you, you need to practice more than even read. Because by the time you're getting to advanced papers, you've already done the foundational level version of the paper. You already have the initial concepts. So you need to literally do mock papers almost daily. Do at least even a question. Nowadays, you can't even select questions anymore. You can't be like, at least let me pick this question, that question, this is the one I know better. Nowadays, all the questions are mandatory. So please practice. There's no way around it. You need to practice. Yeah. So I can see Prince, you said, may I personally contact you? I have many questions about ACCA. So Prince, actually, I do have an email that I put in all my videos. It's called afrigaldiaries@gmail.com. So please reach out to me. As you'll see also, this lady that I had mentioned earlier when answering Techie B, she sent me a very detailed email and I'll respond back to her in addition to this shout out in this video. So please send me an email and I'll respond to you. I can see Techie Beav asked, which exams gave you the hardest time, Belinda? And what did you do different to pass? Very related to your earlier question. It's AAA, Advanced Audit and Assurance. And it was very embarrassing. I felt like it was very embarrassing because I was in the audit profession. So I was a technology risk consultant. So day to day, we were doing audits. We were supporting either internal audits, external audits. So to me, it was obvious. So I was just wondering, why am I failing this paper? I think I tried it like 4 times, 3 or 4 times. It was just one of those, I would just get 49, 47, like just close enough. And again, similar to what I said earlier, you just have to do questions. I think what I would do is I would go through, literally with a fine tooth comb, go through the study manual, and then maybe do one paper right before the exam. And that's wrong. That's not the right approach. When it comes to the strategic professional papers, specifically, especially those ones to do with the advanced version of the paper, you need to practice. It's more about questions than anything, because when you're going through the exam, the marking scheme, you get to see what it is you didn't include in your answer that actually had marking points against it. And it all had to do with, I had very brief answers. I just used to answer what I've been asked. But there's a lot more not explicitly mentioned in the question that's actually needed in your answer. And I only got to know that through doing more and more questions and marking myself and saying, oh, I left this out, I left that out. So it really needs you to reflect on your study method. It needs you to put in a lot more effort, because normally you know if you did everything that you could versus if you didn't. And it just needs you to be honest with yourself and see what it is that you need to address. And most of the time, it's how you're answering the question, because at that time it's open-ended, it's not multiple choice. So it really needs you to make sure every part of your answer is included, that's needed is included. All right. So Halima, tips for strategic business leader. So it's very similar. I think strategic professional, they're just quite similar in terms of what they require from you. At that point, you are a professional. You're no longer doing ACCA for the sake of knowing just what the concepts, the key principles are and memorizing them and regurgitating them in the exam. They need you to understand. They need you to be able to be presented with a scenario and knowing what it is you would do in that case, because they're preparing you for the work, for the workplace, basically. So if you took it more from the context of, I've been paid by a client to look at a certain issue for them, how would I present my answer back to them? How would I present my response back to them? You wouldn't just state, yeah, go ahead and do this. You'd state why. You'd give the reasons why. What is it that you found? What are the observations? So if you position it like it's actually a commercial piece of work and a client has come to you with an issue and you're responding back to them, you will include the right level of detail. That's the amount of detail you need to include in your response. When it comes to strategic business leader, when it comes to strategic business reporting, is a bit more straightforward because it's structured, it's based on actual accounting principles. But all the other ones, please do not just be very brief with your answer. You need to include all the arguments that you noted when you were going through the scenario, and you need to have a conclusion as well in your answer. Okay, and I can see, Prince, you've you found my answer useful, so thanks for that. Please, if you have any more questions, pop them in. I am loving this level of engagement because this is the whole point of joining the Q&A. You want to join this to gain as much benefit as you can from this. And from my experience as well, I'm happy to share my tips. Because I self-studied, I struggled through this ACCA journey. I think I learned more about myself than anything when I was going through this ACCA journey, and it does come to an end. As much as it doesn't seem like it right now, it does come to an end, and there's a lot more outside ACCA. There's more to life than ACCA. So I'm sure you want to get through this and get on with your career. So there were other questions as well that had been shared in some of my videos that I wanted to make sure I cover during this. So I'll just flip on to some of them. But if any other question comes to mind, please pop it into the chat and I'll make sure to address them. So there's this question that came up about, please do a video on different ACCA paper combinations, which can be done with every sitting. So you can do a maximum of 4 papers per session. I would encourage you to do maximum possible when you're starting off, because that's when the papers are very easy. So please do 3 or 4. Even if you fail one, you can always resit it in the next paper. Don't be afraid to go for maximum possible, because that's how you're able to progress through quickly. Now, where things get tough, be honest with yourself, especially when you start. Like for me, tax and financial management were quite tough for me, because they were just, to me, they were theoretical. They were not what I do day to day. So it needed me to take a bit more time to understand. For such papers, I did 2. But where possible, don't just do 1 exam per sitting, unless, I can't remember who it was who said that you're only starting now for September, maybe then just do 1. But then when you have time, please sign up for more than 1 paper, because it's unlikely you fail both. Not that that scenario can't happen, but it's unlikely you fail both. So you'll always, but slowly but surely, progress through the levels. You can combine them anyhowly in terms, even when you go to book on the My ACCA website, you can only book for the level that you're at. If it's applied skills or applied knowledge, you can only book papers in that level before it unlocks the next level up. So within that, there's no, what you say, advisable combination. Just take the ones you like. There's some which are quite related to each other. I think like reporting, but sure, does it go? Maybe you want to do that one with tax. I'm trying to remember the name for it, the one that's to do with like financial statements and how you report on them. I'm trying to remember, it's been a while. But you probably want to do the reporting one together with the tax one, because they're all related to each other. It's all just about following principles on how to report on taxes, or if it comes to financial statements, they're very straightforward. It's less about those, what you'd say, are not theoretical concepts, but they're very, it's mathematical, basically. So you probably want to do the mathematical papers together, and then the other ones you read on separately, like business and law. You want to maybe do it with performance reporting, but there is no specific way to combine the papers. You can do them however you feel like, as long as they're within the allowed set, which is, if you are applied knowledge, do applied knowledge papers. But I would encourage you to do as many as you can in one sitting, because they get harder as you go along. There'll be a time when you can only literally do 1 at a time, which is the strategic professional level. Depending on, you can even do 2 though, if you have time, but there'll be a level where you need to do just 1 or 2 to be able to pass. So the earlier ones, do as many as you can. Before I move on to the next one, I can see there is a question. So yeah, I do not want to I don't want to murder your first name, but I'm guessing it's Sagi. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But you're basically asking, how long did I take to complete ACCA? I took 6 years. Yeah, I took about 6 years. Average, as I mentioned earlier, average is like 3 years. But for me, I was self-studying. I was doing it at my own pace. So it took me about 6 years. Yeah. I can see Diana. Hi, I'm studying for SBR, Strategic Business Reporting. Yeah. September sitting, and I'm struggling. I feel you on that. So far, haven't gotten any questions right. In my classes, everyone looks like they know what they're doing. It's hard not to compare myself. Okay. I see what you're saying. I would probably say it's hard not to compare yourself. I know everyone has their own journey. Everyone understands in different ways. So it may be, because there are people who are louder in a class environment, and you may be shocked. Maybe it doesn't necessarily mean they're understanding more than you are. But I would say probably have a think of what's your preferred study method, because maybe your study method isn't lectures. Maybe yours is watching videos. Maybe yours is watching tutorials. Maybe yours is doing questions. So when you reflect, you will probably know what you enjoy. Like, what is it that if you wanted to read something right now, if you wanted to go through a concept right now, the easiest way for you to get it and maximize on that. It might need you to buy extra study material, or it might need you to pay for it, because there's some online, if video is your preferred way, there are some online platforms where they offer, video sessions. It might be questions, so you will need to buy the questions manual. Whichever it is, just invest, because you will not regret it, especially when it comes to questions. Because questions is the best way to know that you've understood, especially SBR is strategic professional level. You do need to do questions, like, especially if you can do extra papers and get your teacher to, like, especially if you failed certain questions, get your teacher to explain, like, after the class, because it looks like for you it's not self-study, so you do have the benefit of asking a subject matter expert, which is your teacher, your lecturer, to explain concepts to you. I would probably do extra, in addition to whatever homework you get, do extra questions that are exam-like. There's no need for you to do shorter version. Do exam-like questions. That's the only way you know whether you are set for the exam, and get your teacher to explain to you. Like, especially if you notice there's a trend, whenever this is the type of question that's asked, I get to fail it. Then ask your teacher to give you at least tips on what is it that they can spot. But normally, even when you mark for yourself, if you do just have a look at the marking scheme, you'll be able to tell what is it that's missing from your answer. Especially SBR is more to do with math, like it's more financial reporting. So financial statement is the same year, it has the same structure year in, year out. So it's more about, is it I'm not able to get the right data to place into this field? Is it that I don't understand what actually goes here? Versus it's easier to know what you're getting wrong in SBR type of paper compared to SBL. Because SBL is more subjective. Sometimes, in your opinion, this is what the answer should be, and someone else's opinion is different. But SBR is very, like, structured. So it's easier to know where you're going wrong compared to other papers. But I wish you all the best. You have time, and it's good that you're going to classes. So yeah, practice is what I would encourage you to do. I can see Prince, you're asking if I can share my email. I'll actually put it here in the chat. Yeah, so feel free to reach me. I've put it in the chat. Techie B, I can see you're asking if you do a few at a time, will you remember the material when it's needed? Because at that point, wouldn't it be cramming? So the initial ones, I'll just be completely honest. The initial papers, the advanced knowledge, especially applied knowledge, it's like they want you to cram. It is more about, this is how it is. There's no, like, thinking behind it, much thinking behind it. It's more principles. It's more, I found it more like it's cramming. The point when you know whether you actually understood is when it gets to applied skills a bit, and then strategic professional. So you still come around to the same, the papers build on themselves. I don't know how to put it. Like financial management, then there's advanced financial management. There is the reporting one, then there's strategic business reporting. So there's always a level 2 of the same paper. So their first paper, it's like they're just introducing you to this world of concepts. And at that point, they might not make much sense. So I felt like I was cramming, that's the truth. But by the time I was doing the strategic professional level of the paper, I definitely understood it, because I had to. If you're presented with a case, it's not, you can't just plaster the principle into that. You have to have a think of how it applies and whatnot. So it kind of organically becomes, you organically get to understand. So that's why I would encourage you when you're starting off to do a lot of papers, because at that point, there's not much required from you other than just knowing the concept. But after that is when it gets technical, and you have to understand fully, and you have to apply it to different scenarios. Yeah, but that's my opinion, open to be challenged. It's just how I found it during my experience. So I can see another question here from Sergi. Is the demand for chartered accountants high currently in the UK? I think it depends on the profession. I think there's definitely a high demand for auditors. I think there always has been. It's just they're just scarce. I think everyone at some point just leaves the audit practice. So I left. I'm not in audit anymore, but I always keep getting ads for, oh, we need, I was more in IT auditor. We need a risk person. We need an accountant. We need an auditor. So I think for sure the profession is nowhere near saturated in terms of qualified accountants. Because of course, when people are like doing entry level, people are many. But when you get chartered is when a lot of people drop. People don't manage to get their full qualification. So there is definitely enough right now. I can definitely say from the ads I keep getting on LinkedIn, I'm very tempted to go back into audit, but I'm keen on staying in strategy. So for those of you who don't know, I'm in tech strategy. So yeah, I'm keen to stay put where I'm at, but I keep getting ads. So I think just from that, there's definitely demand. So Diana, I can see, yeah, perfect. You're welcome. And Prince. So I'll just flip back to some of the other questions I got. And just, of course, in the interest of time, I don't want to keep you here for too long. I'll probably do just 2 more questions from the ones that were in my other videos, older videos. And if any other questions come up, I'll just pick up those and we can get on with our Sunday. So there's this question here. I know I want to get ACCA qualification, but right now I feel so lost because I'm not sure how exactly to get going. Do I just download the study book, an exam kit, and learn it all? So, so this was one of the questions that I got from some of my videos. I would say there are different options to get started with ACCA. Of course, the most obvious one is registering as a student. But after that, it's for you to choose what study method you want. I personally self-studied. It was the option that was the cheapest and most available to me. I was not planning to invest in a college, especially here in the UK. They're just so expensive. And I just thought, I can do it. It was not the easiest option. I can tell you there are many times I felt like, why did I even get myself into this? But it's doable. I'm here to show you that it's doable. Of course, if you do have no issue with going to college, maybe your employer is sponsoring you, maybe it's self-sponsored and you're happy to invest in it, knock yourself out. Like self-study is not something that I can just broadcast and say, you know what, go for it. It's the easiest option. It's not. It's hard, but it's doable. Don't ever think that, okay, I can't afford going for lectures. So does that mean I can't start ACCA? No, you can. It's doable. I did all the levels by myself, but it was hard and it needed a lot more practice because it's like you're reading a storybook and you have to make sense of it by yourself, especially if you're not doing it day to day. If you do it day to day, it helps. So yeah, I would definitely say that if you're going through the self-study route, then yes, all it takes is literally register as a student, register for the exam on my ACCA website, and then buy the study manual and the question manual, and that's it. That's all I used. I know that people who maybe watch videos, whichever route that you take, make sure it's an ACCA approved tuition provider, whether it's their material that you're buying or you're attending their classes, just make sure that it's ACCA approved. All right. Last question when it comes to the ones that were from my videos, then I'll have a look at the comments just to see if any of you have raised further questions. In regards to PER, is it possible for me to start with it straight after completing my applied knowledge? So PER is practical experience requirement. So in addition to doing exams, you will need to show your work experience. And the work experience is not just any, it needs to be relevant to the performance objectives that they need you to have. So they're usually 5 essential ones that cut across. So it doesn't matter what type of role you're in, you need to be able to demonstrate those 5. And then there are 4 technical. So those are dependent on what it is you want to specialize in. Are you more on taking the tax route? Are you more taking the advisory route? Are you taking the audit route? So those are the ones where you need to literally go out of your way, maybe at your workplace, to get exposure to certain elements that will help you tick off those objectives. So when it comes to PER, you can't start it straight away. You need 3 years, 36 months worth of work experience. So the earlier you start, the better. So that by the time you're doing your 13th paper, you are literally signing it, finishing your exams, and also getting your experience signed off. So you can start it straight away. It just needs to be a relevant role. Check if your employer is an ACCA employer, like Platinum, like my audit firm was one of the ones that are ACCA approved. So what that meant was that there was less paperwork. But even if your employer isn't listed on the ACCA website as a partner, an approved partner, it's still fine as long as it's a relevant role and it is helping you achieve those objectives. You just need to get it signed off every time. So you need to set up your supervisor. There's a whole like like you go on the ACCA website and you're able to log your experience and you set up your supervisor so that they can log in and sign it off. So it's straightforward, to be honest, when you're ready to do it. But I would definitely say get started if you can straight away, because you want to finish your exams and then also get qualified soon after. All right, so just on the comments, I can see Takibi saying thanks, you're welcome. And then Halima, do you think advanced tax and audit are good optional papers to do? I did advanced audit and I struggled. And I was in audit, like I was in IT audit, so you'd have thought it would be the easiest, but yeah, I struggled. I've not done tax. I definitely shied away from tax because I had no interest in it. I would just say choose the one, because advanced version of the papers is, as it says, advanced. It's advanced. It needs you to literally understand fully, to apply it to a real life scenario. So I would say choose an advanced paper that aligns with what you'll be doing or what you aspire to be doing, because there's no point for you to go to that level when it comes to that subject and then not choose it at all. So I would definitely say choose something that will definitely apply to your day-to-day work or what you plan to be in the future, or you also enjoy as well. You'll have done the applied skills version of it. You know how it felt when you were reading for it. You'll have done the tax paper, the audit paper, performance management paper, financial management paper. And did you enjoy it? How did you find the experience? How did you perform? That can also be a factor that you consider. But it's not easy, that I can tell you. So you definitely want to choose something that's worth it for you and the struggles that you're going to go through. And then I can see Techie B, you're saying, how can I set myself up to get a job in the Big Four once I qualify? So Big Four, I'm actually working for a Big Four right now. You don't need to just work for a Big Four. ACCA is so marketable. There are so many organizations that would love to have you when you're qualified. I would say Big Four, first of all, they sponsor you to do an accounting qualification anyway. So you don't need to be qualified to get started. You can straight away apply for the grad management, like grad trainee programs, and they will normally sponsor you to do ACA, CIMA, like it depends on the location as well of where you are. Most of them don't sponsor you to do ACCA, but you'll do the equivalent, like an ACA, whatever is relevant for that country. Anyway, if you're qualified outside of a Big Four and you want to get into a Big Four, I think it will be super easy. Because that's what they need and you kind of already have it, but it's just more so what work experience do you have, because ACCA is just, as it's a certification by itself, it needs to be supported with good work experience. So, and it goes down also to how you present yourself, how you interview, how is your CV, is it, at its best. But definitely doing ACCA is you setting yourself apart. So that's definitely a step in the right direction. Cool. All right, I think we are 40 minutes in, which is perfect. I loved the engagement in this live. So please put in the comments suggestions for other future lives, what you'd like me to cover. It's something I've been thinking about, is allowing people to dial in. I have not thought about how it works yet, but it would be good to know. Like, let me know, was it enough to ask your question in the comments, or would you have preferred to dial in and also, join live and you get to see you and you ask your question live? It's something I'm willing to explore in my future lives. So let me know what you think in the comments. And yeah, have a very good Sunday. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.